halfway across the ocean, all of a sudden we didn't know that the lithium batteries on these super liners, they would catch on fire. And all of a sudden we're flying and all the electricity goes off on our plane. I'm sound asleep. I wake up, I look at Mark and I said, what's going on? He goes, all the electricity just went off. He said, there's nothing. And I looked at him, I said, we're not going to get dropped off in the ocean. God has won this victory and we're getting home. At that moment, all the electricity went up and we were fine. But we found out it was the lithium batteries. And I think the next week they pulled all of those superliners off from flying because of the lithium batteries were catching on fire.
God's hand was definitely protecting you guys every step of that journey. Welcome to Witness the Wonder. I'm your host, Christina Smith. Today, I'm joined by my dear friend and writing coach, Missy Maxwell Worton. She's an award-winning author of Don't Mess with This Mama, the true story of how she and her husband, Mark, rescued their adopted daughter. Her journey is one of bold obedience and God's faithfulness at every turn. Missy, I'm honored to have you with me today.
Christina, it's so good to be here. Thank you for getting me on.
I'm so glad. I couldn't do this without you because you are a lot of the inspiration of why Witness the Wonder exists. And all the doors that God's opening in my life, just helping me find my message. So I'm blessed. But before we dive in, I know you personally since you are my writing coach and dear friend. But for anyone who hasn't read Don't Mess with This Mama, can you give them a quick overview of what the book is about?
Absolutely. Well, it was actually my debut book, and I didn't really believe that I could write books when I wrote it. But it is a true story of us rescuing our 6-year-old adopted daughter from going into slavery. It tells a story of how God showed up for us in a big way, but it also tells a story of how we had to choose love over fear every single day. And of course, I didn't see that till after I started writing it. So that is the story, and the ending you'll have to read.
Right. Absolutely. That's what she trains us, folks. We don't give away in our interviews the ending of our books. Can you take us back to the beginning? What first opened your heart to adoption, and how did you and Mark start moving in that direction?
That's a really good question, because when I was a little girl, back in the day where we only had 3 channels to choose from and you had to go across the room to change it, I used to see Sally Struthers. She would come on and she would have these orphans that needed food. They were dying and they were from Ethiopia. And I would turn to my mom and say, Mom, we've got to go. Why don't we go get a whole bunch? We have a big home. We can feed them and they can live with us. And she goes, oh, sweetie, that's not the way it works. But I would weep over these children. So anytime something shows up early on in life, that is something that you have a compassion and a passion for. So later on, we moved to Franklin, Tennessee. And our neighbor was in the process of adopting one of the first children from Ethiopia. And so we became fast, close friends. And we threw a big shower. We did all these fun things to welcome this little boy that she adopted as a baby. My heart just went out to him. That same woman sent me an email. She said, these are some children. They're waiting children. They need a home. I misread it and I thought it was just, they need some place to come to for the summer. So I called her and I said, hey, we could take a few. And she goes, Missy, this isn't just for the summer. They need a forever family. Okay, now that is something I probably need to talk to my husband about. So let me get back with you. My husband came home that day and me and the kids, that was the time I was homeschooling. My heart was so full. I knew the moment I laid eyes on this one little boy holding a pink soccer ball, my heart exploded. I wanted this child. I knew we were connected. I knew that our destinies had converged. I showed him the picture of the little boy and he just smiled and he said, well, whoever decides to adopt him will help him. We'll financially send some money. I just started weeping and he goes, I have a feeling this goes deeper. And I said, he's connected. I feel like he's my son. I know I didn't birth him, but I know he's my son. He said, okay, let's pray about this. This is a big move. We've got our 2 kids. We got our boy and we got our girl. We're good to go. But my heart had already shifted and I was like, yeah, we got to go get him. Here's the funny thing about that. I don't know that a lot of people know this, but at the same time, I was looking at his picture and we were deciding that we were going to move forward to adopt this waiting child. Our best friends had seen pictures of his best friends in the orphanage, and there were two of them. They adopted Shawit's best friends, and we
Oh my
went together.
goodness.
Isn't that
That is
crazy? That is like God. And they said, "You don't understand. It's not easy to put people. You just can't do it. You can't adopt out at the same time." But you all, God had a play in this. So that was our first adoption. It was amazing, and it took 6 months from the moment I laid eyes on him till the moment we came home with him. That's it.
Well, that's actually really fast in and of itself. For an international adoption, that's crazy. I knew someone who adopted from China. She adopted a couple children at different points. It took like 2 years. It took a
Yes,
long time. I can't
it
believe you did that
does.
in 6 months.
Well, and it was interesting, and we kind of were like, this went fast. And they said, first of all, not very many people adopt these children because they are at least 6 years old and older. Everybody wants the babies, but waiting children, they're they're like, oh, they come with trouble. They come with problems. Yeah, they do. All kids come with problems.
That is true. That is true.
So we just kind of went, okay, and
So that's a Shawit, right? That's the
sweet.
first
That's our
adoption.
son.
Book is about your daughter's adoption, though, correct?
Right. That is Favor. And she came 3 years later. And she was again a waiting child. She was, at the time we adopted her, she was 6 and we believe possibly 7. They don't have birth certificates. They're usually born in a field, not in the hospital. So we didn't have anything to tell us the exact birth date. Yeah.
At some point, I think when you got into the adoption with Favor, you found out there was something a little more involved with this adoption than your first adoption.
Yeah, some government officials had come into the orphanage where Favor was. They saw her. She's beautiful. She is really a stunning little girl and a
Yeah.
stunning adult now. But one of the things, they wanted her out. They wanted to keep her in Ethiopia, and they were going to put her with a foster care that was false. The person was very wealthy and very powerful that wanted her, and he wanted her and 3 other little girls. This person, sadly, if you did the research onto them, every single child he foster cared had ended up mysteriously disappearing or mysteriously dying of a disease. So we knew, you don't have to go very deep to know how far the trafficking goes and how devastating it can be for orphans.
You traveled over there to get her, correct? It was
Right.
you and Mark, and I think your daughter went with you, right?
Right. The first time we were in the clear. Nothing was really being said yet. We went over, we passed all the Ethiopian government and embassy. We got all the stuff that we needed for her passport, her passport from Ethiopia and everything, the visa, so that she could come to America. But then they had a phase where we had 1 week with her. Then we have to say, yes, this is a child we want to adopt. So we were like, one day, yes, this is the child we want to adopt. Can we just take her home? And they said, no, you have to wait about 2 to 3 months and come back for the American embassy has to approve everything. At that point is when we found out that the man who wanted her was very dangerous, but they felt that she was safe inside the orphanage. I didn't feel good about it, but we had to get on the plane and leave her. The next thing we knew, she was taken out of the orphanage by this person and put into a different one. She never did get trafficked, so I want to clarify that, but it was heading that way. God intervened in a mighty way. When we came back with our daughter, we thought we were just going to go in, do our embassy appointment, 4 days. We flew in, and we knew possibly it could be rocky because we were the last plane out of Dulles International Airport before Hurricane Sandy slammed into the East Coast. We flew out very bumpy into our own storm in Addis Ababa, where we found out we were going to have to do a rescue mission to go get her out of the situation. That began our story. We had our 12-year-old with us, and we're thinking, what are
So
we
you
doing?
didn't know that before you left. You didn't know any of that. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't have taken your 12-year-old with you if you knew how
No,
dangerous.
yeah, we kept saying it we could go, there would be no problem. We just go in, do a quick embassy appointment, and we can fly right out 3 days later. So we were ready to come in, and right before we left, they said, we've got a problem. She's been taken out of the orphanage. The other child that's been taken out, her parents came in, her adoptive parents came in, could not even see her, and they've already left without her. And I said, they left? Even though that's their child, an embassy appointment and everything. They said they left, and they left an attorney to fight for their case. So they kind of warned us that we may have a problem getting her. But I had a dream. In that dream, it was the father saying, if you go to Ethiopia, the moment your foot touches the ground of Ethiopia, the victory will be yours. Now, it was a Daniel moment in that the angels were released, 3 weeks, 21 days before he ever saw them or come to his rescue. That was us. We didn't see anything for 4 weeks. And I'm going, where's the victory? Where is the victory, God?
So you were
So,
over there for 4 weeks?
yeah,
It was
we
supposed
got
to be 3 days and it took 4 weeks.
Yeah, so what happened is they knew what time our flight was going and they stopped us. They took away everything. They took away her passport, her visa, everything that would take her out of the country. They took it and walked it through doors that said, you can't pass. That was immigration. They told us she's not allowed to go, but you need to go. I said the words, I will not leave my daughter here, because I knew where she would go. They even said, we'll take care of her. We'll take care of her. And I was like, no. And I pulled her close to me, and she was not allowed to go near. And there's a lot that goes into that moment that happened, but that sent us into hiding into radical Islam. So we had to hide out, come out to battle for her through the court system, because we were advised by our government and by someone who was in the government there, you need to do it correctly by their government or they will see you as human traffickers. We're not. So we'll do it right if you say how to do it. We want to honor them. So had a hideaway. So we found a hideaway, and that was another God moment, miracle.
Wow. So you were hiding away, you, your husband, Favor, and Mackenzie, right? So you guys are hiding out. I assume there's some intense, dangerous moments in there too. If you're hiding, then somebody's probably looking for you, right?
Yeah, we had a very powerful person looking for us. And we know that he was looking for us because he feared for his own life from the person that actually wanted favor. This person, we know they are Satanists. That's one thing we do know for a fact. So we know his intentions. The beautiful thing is, right after we went through immigration, we were able to grab our bags, or we would have had one set of clothes. Things just started piling up like miraculous. We're standing there. We now know we're stuck. I refuse to leave. Mark refuses to leave me there alone with her, because I'm begging him to take Mackenzie and go back to America, and I'll stay and fight for her. He's like, I'm not leaving you. So we're standing there going, what do we do? What do we do with the immigration officers surrounding us? There are probably 8 to 11 of them. It was very intimidating. All of a sudden, I hear my name in Addis Ababa. I'm going, see, who's calling my name? I turn around, and it is a lady that I know through adoption. She was transporting 2 adopted children to their new families in America. She rushed over to us and she said, what is going on? She said, I've never heard of this happening ever. So what is up with this adoption? The immigration people just said, this little girl cannot leave. The adoption is suspended, which was a lie. It never got suspended. So she said, my daughter's here. Well, I knew her daughter. She had lived with our neighbor who got us in this in the first place. So we got to know her. Mackenzie got to know her all summer. She said, I have a place that you can go to. So we packed up our stuff and we were taken to a beautiful Christian, kind of like an Airbnb. But we can only stay there one night because a bunch of doctors were coming in to work. We were in shock. We watched our plane take off into the sky and we thought, we're stuck here. We're stuck. What do we do? Are we going to stay here? Then the next thing I know, I put it on Facebook, and I woke up the next morning to one of the people in my Facebook post said, Missy, we moved here a month ago. We did not know why, but I believe this is it. We have an apartment you can come in and live at until this is worked at. It'll be low rent. It'll be like $7 a day if that's okay. And I'm like, that's our budget. Because on top of that, Mark had lost his job. So, God worked it all out. And she said, yes, here's how to get here. Where all she said was the words, it's on an 8-acre compound and we have 8 armed guards. So you'll be protected. And I just didn't even think about 8 armed guards. Why would you need 8 armed guards? Well, as we're driving there, suddenly I felt the spirit shift. I looked around and all I saw were women in covered from head to toe. And I was like, is Ethiopia have just a high rate of Muslims? And they said, yes, and you're going to stay in the most radical portion there is where you're going to. And I was like, okay, all right, Father, I give this to you. Benghazi had just happened. So we were in the middle of just a radical area. So it wasn't because I know Muslims and they're the kindest people. We have neighbors that are, and we love them, very friendly. So we went to this place and there it was. I understood why it had razor surrounding us. It was an academy that they brought children that were American embassy children, but also missionary children, that this is where they went to school. It was a beautiful place. It felt like a resort away from home in an Ethiopian sense, but it was our safe place in the midst of darkness. There's a scene that happens in the book that you'll have to read it, but God showed up miraculously to let us know that we had angelic presence all around us.
That's amazing. So you obviously, I know you can't give away the end of the book. Obviously, you came home with her because she's now an adult. What happened next? I'm like sitting here just intrigued. I'm like, I need to read the book. I can't wait to see the movie.
Yeah, I know. Well, there are, when I started writing the book, and again, I didn't feel like I could write, I knew I could write the movie because that's what I did. I wrote film and television. But when they came to me, Howie Klausner, he said, you're the one to write the book. I'll write your movie. And I'm like, no, 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 I don't write books. And it all had to be because early on I was told that I shouldn't write books because my grammar was atrocious. And I will agree to that, but my creativity and my story flow is really good. So I went ahead and I gave God my yes to writing a book. But in the midst of it, when we were there surrounded by radical Islam, every time we had to go out, we had to drive through this one area. They would surround our car and they would bang on it, just completely bang on it. What they knew is they knew we were Americans or they knew we weren't Ethiopian. I don't know how they figured out I wasn't Ethiopian, or my husband, but I had to start putting a cover over my head and completely cover myself and keep my head down because they were drawn to the blonde hair. We would travel to the judge, and the judge was the very same woman that gave us favor in the first place. And she remembers working with us. Little did we know at the time that this was a woman who actually they fought her behind the scenes saying, we will take away your license. We won't let you practice. You will regret ever letting. It was a David and Goliath type situation. And we were actually known as the David and Goliath trial. And it was the Addis Ababa. They called it the Addis Ababa trial. And we were David. The system was Goliath. And we didn't realize we were up against so much, but God, the person who had left their attorney to fight for them, we found out was one of the problems behind all of it. They were all connected. So we were alone, but we had a church that surrounded us. And it was a beautiful situation because we would go there on Sundays and we would just worship and just weep before God, but yet be filled with joy because we knew he was fighting for us. The whole church was praying for us. The other thing that happened is in the church, there was a very strong man, and he said the Lord told him that he was to be our bodyguard and to drive us everywhere. We said, absolutely, we would love a bodyguard. He would come and he would get us. He would guard the 2 girls while we would go through the court system and have to be up there for hours on end. He would guard the girls so they wouldn't come in because we didn't know if this person, because he used to be a federal court judge, would come in and take her and basically arrest us because he had told the court system that we were traffickers and that we were coming to get her to take her into slavery. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe anybody would even believe it because all you have to go through to create a dossier. The dossier, if you ever have adopted, you spill out everything. There's no hidden part of your life. Every
Yeah, I
ticket,
have friends that have adopted, and it's like pages upon pages upon pages that you fill out.
it pages.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just like, okay, you need all of my medical history, all of it. You need every ticket I've ever gotten for speeding. You need it. Yeah, we need it. Pictures of your home. What kind of home will this child live in? And I'm thinking, well, what if it's an apartment? I still have a loving heart.
Right. I
I'm
can
going to
still
raise her
provide for her.
well.
She has a roof over her head and food on the table. She's good.
She's good. She's good.
My interviews are split into 2 parts for TV, but on Patreon, you get the full uncut story before anyone else. Real stories, bonus content, early access. Visit patreon.com/witness the wonder to become a member today. We would love to have you part of the community.
Looking back, this was a pretty intense trial that you went through, like to get her and bring her home. I know one of the things you talk about a lot in our stories when we write is that red thread that weaving through our story or through our life. Looking back, can you see now how God was preparing you before you ever stepped into this journey?
Absolutely. There was a moment, it was about a year and a half, right before we started taking her on. I asked the father, I said, Father, how do you see me? I want to know how you see me. Now, I'm thinking he would have seen me as a bride, just that's how I, saw that. Okay, I bet that's how he sees me, but I want to know. The vision that came back to me was a warrior, and it was not in a flowy gown. I was armored up like a Roman soldier. I had a sword and I had a shield, but right next to me was just a giant lion, the Lion of Judah, standing head to head with me. I was like, a warrior? Why would I need to be a warrior? And that's when he started preparing my heart to understand the battle cry and to know that when I go into worship, that is the best form of warring. I was a worship leader at the time. So we would go into praise and worship and I would start warring. I mean, it's just like David. He would worship before he went to war. Because when you worship, you see things the way God sees it, and it's not a big deal. So I had peace throughout all of this, but there was fear that stepped in that I'd never see my kids that were back in America, that I'd never see America again, that I'd be put in a third world prison and die there, because that was the goal by this one person. We just need to shut them up and put them in there, and that she would be taken and put in slavery, and that my daughter would be put in there too. So I made plans. I did everything to make sure the girls would be taken to a safe place and Mackenzie would be sent back to America.
So the trial that you were going through, was it against you guys or just to nullify the adoption?
It was to nullify the adoption because she was already ours when we went the first time. She was our daughter. Her name was Favor Mark Worton because they take the father's name. I said, we got to get rid of that Mark real quick. We got that changed as soon as we got to America, but that was her name. And she was ours. She was a Worton, but it got revoked. He put that it was suspended. And so the judge was very angry with that because she said, I never suspended your adoption. This is your daughter. I proclaimed her your daughter. I have to figure out what's going on that these children are being taken to this person. And keep in mind, that person was very powerful. It would be like this person would have been like messing with somebody like Epstein. It would be somebody who was taking children and dispensing,
Very wealthy,
sending,
very powerful, had a
very
lot of very
powerful,
high
very
connections, basically.
connected to every powerful person in the place. That's what we looked at. We didn't know it at the time, but the more we learned, the more we realized we're up against somebody really bad.
So at what point did the tide turn? Because obviously you're here and she's an adult. So how did the tide turn to you guys
Well,
getting to come home?
oh, that's a good question because, okay, one of the things that my husband did caused us to separate. I was angry at him because I begged him to get out of the country. on Thursday, just let's get out. Well, Hurricane Sandy had stopped all planes from getting out. So one of the things, he didn't get us out because of money, because keep in mind, he had lost his job. So he kept saying, I'm going to just trust God. I trust God. He's going to get us out of here. When we got stopped at immigration, I looked at him with a look that went, don't talk to me. I don't want you to talk to me. I'm angry. So I had a huge offense towards him. I was angry. His not getting us a ticket out on Thursday, and we're standing there on Friday. We can't move. They won't let her go. It caused us to possibly lose our freedom, lose our life, Favor lose her freedom, lose her life, and our own daughter be in a bad situation. So I was angry. I was mama bear angry at him. In the midst of it, before we were going to face the person who was prosecuting us and trying to say we were human traffickers, we went on top of a mountain outside of Addis Ababa, and we looked down. Coming back, I looked down upon the city, and I just said, God, I don't know if this is my last day of freedom. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be in a third world prison. I turned around, and a lady was walking with these 9-foot dead branches on her back, bent over. I stopped her and I said, can I get your picture? She put her hand out for money. I gave her some money. Birr is Ethiopian money, very 6 cents American. I took her picture, and as she was walking away, I took her picture again. It's in the book, the picture of her. When I got home, well, to a place we were hiding, I looked at it, and I heard God said, that's you. You're carrying a bunch of dead branches with a fence and holding your husband right in unforgiveness. You can't win where you're divided. You have to come together. That night, through a series of things that happened, I forgave my husband, clearly forgave him in a second. I forgave him. He said, I knew you had forgiven me. I never brought it up again. I said, we're in this together. We're either going to go down together or we're going to have victory. At that moment, things started shifting for us. If a person is watching and they're saying, I don't know why we can't get ahead financially. I don't know why we just keep getting hit. The enemy just keeps attacking you. Do you have an open door that you have an offense towards your husband or your wife? Do you have an open door? Because if you're fighting against each other, then you're not together, which God commands us to be one and work it out so that we can step forward victoriously in what he has for us. I recognized in that moment, I think we're bringing this on ourselves. We went forward together. Everything went better after that, even though we had a lot of major things happen. We went through it together. It's a lot easier to go through it with someone than fighting someone.
Absolutely. Obviously, you won your court case.
Yeah.
How did that eventually happen? Like, what was did the judge just rule in your favor and then you were escorted out of the country? Like, what happened?
Yeah, what happened is the next day from, where we knew that we were going to face the person who was accusing us face to face. And listen, when I looked at him, all I had was love because I had been in the presence of God. I had worshiped. So I was ready for battle in love. I wasn't angry. I kept saying, God, please let him know the love that I know that you have, because he wouldn't do this. He wouldn't do this if he was covered with your love. If he really knew you, he couldn't do this to an orphan. He couldn't do this to us. We're innocent. And so the judge, it was a fireworks in Amharic, which we didn't understand a word. We just sat there going back and forth, looking at the judge yelling at him and him responding, and our attorney talking back and her yelling at him. I mean, we were just like, this does not look good. But during that time when we were in that battle, we didn't know our daughters were being watched. And the gentleman who was their bodyguard just crossed over a street to buy a new pair of sandals, which Favor had broken his sandals, and he was going straight to a retreat. When he did that, a white van pulled up behind them, and the men got out and tried to get our girls. When he turned around, he saw it. He started yelling. He can't even tell me. He started yelling, get them away from the car, get them away from the car. And automatically, all these people started pushing the men away from the car as he started running back across the street towards them. The men got back in the van and sped out, almost hitting him, trying to get out of there quick. So they were trying to get both girls. Can you imagine me losing both my daughters? He looked around, and there was nobody in the streets. All those people most likely were angelic presence that moved in and came in, and they had to move the men out of the way. I'm telling, miracle after miracle after miracle. It is a wonder. It's a sign and a wonder was happening everywhere. So after the judge saw that they were trying false allegations, she knew. She was like, this is false. They are not here. She knew. And she told us, I always knew. I always knew you were not here because I looked at all your records, and you're not people that would come over here and have 3 other children and try to get a slave. No, you're kind people, and you do a lot of good for the people around you. She had decided, but boy, that weekend we got emails from the bad guy that we would be going to prison, that she had already decided against us, and what we were doing was against the law. We needed to go ahead and say goodbye to our daughter, say goodbye to freedom. We were going to jail. Here's the interesting thing. We did not get that email because a weird thing happened on Friday. Right before that was sent, all the internet went down where we were staying. All of it. Nobody had internet for 3 days. And so we didn't get it until we had gone for our final hearing to hear whether we won or we would be going to prison. God is good. Mark opened it up, handed it to our lawyer. Lawyer looked at it. He goes, oh, he's trying to scare you because he wants you to turn over the kid. He would call her the kid. Give us the kid back. Go pick another one. We're like, one, like, you're talking like a puppy. This is our daughter. We are in love with her. We want to provide for her. We're willing to fight for her. So don't mess with us right now. But
Man,
that's what happened.
when you started telling the story about when your daughters were almost kidnapped, from the moment when you first talked about it, I just got goosebumps all over my arms. Then when you got to the end of it, as you progressively told that story, I could feel them just becoming more and more. And when you got to the end, I'm like, oh, that explains why. It was definitely one of those wonder moments where God is stepping in. So that is such a cool story. I love it. I don't think I've heard that part of your story before.
Yeah, that it was a wonder, and it was like, where did the people go? It's like they run away, or what happened here? I mean, there were people, but not that many. There were tons of people that crowded in and pushed them out and guarded the girls.
Wow. Miracle. So you that is a pretty powerful story, pretty amazing. What was it like the moment that you finally got to bring her home?
Gosh, you almost didn't believe it when we went through immigration, the same ones who had stopped us. All of a sudden, again, the guy was reading everything, and we're like, not again. We gotta go. Let us go. We won. And the immigration officer, who was the meanest, by far the meanest person that talked to us, she came over, and I saw her starting to walk with her hand up, and a bunch of them started walking towards us again. And we were just like, oh, no, we've gone through everything. We did this right. And she said, let them go through. They have been through enough. Let them go through. She goes, we are apologize for this man. She literally had to come over and pull it out and said, stamp it and get it away. And he had, now we found out that he probably most likely was paid to do that. A lot of corruption. So as they all came, it was one of those moments. I said, are you sure we're good to go? And she goes, you are good to go. Almost all the same immigration officers came out. They hugged Favor. They hugged us. They said, we are so happy for you. We couldn't get you out of our mind the way you pleaded for her. We knew something was wrong. I said, yeah, but thank you. And we're happy to go. They were like, are you ready to go to America? And Favor was like, yes, America. So we left, and they all were standing waving goodbye. I almost wanted to sing that song, So Long, Farewell. Good.
I love
Like
it.
it was that moment because we're going up the escalator slowly, and they're still going, bye. This is a movie moment. So we got up there, got on the plane, and of all things, we got on the same flight that the one girl who came to rescue us the night that immigration stopped us was on the same flight. So someone switched seats with her so she could be in the back with us. You know, we didn't get any good seats going out last minute. And we flew, and okay, so here's the funny thing. Halfway across the ocean, all of a sudden we didn't know that the lithium batteries on these super liners, I forget what they're called, but they would catch on fire. And all of a sudden we're flying and all the electricity goes off on our plane. I'm sound asleep. I wake up, I look at Mark and I said, what's going on? He goes, all the electricity just went off. He said, there's nothing. And I looked at him, I said, we're not going to get dropped off in the ocean. God has won this victory and we're getting home. At that moment, all the electricity went up and we were fine, but we found out it was the lithium batteries. I think the next week they pulled all of those superliners off from flying because of the lithium batteries were catching on fire.
Wow. God's hand was definitely protecting you guys every step of that journey.
Is there anything else I could choose? Love over fear, God, because I used to fear flying. And now I'm like, I ain't going anywhere till God's ready.
Right.
And
right. Well, that was quite a battle that you went through to bring favor home. If someone's listening today and they're in the middle of their own battle or they're just in that waiting period, what would you say to encourage them now?
One of the words that I learned to lean into was trust. Trust, because God wants what is best for us, not what is best for us in that moment, because in that moment, we would have gotten out with favor the first time. But because we waited and we had to battle for her, hundreds of kids got their freedom as well. God had a bigger plan than just getting us out with favor. He had a plan to get several orphans out. So trust him. Hold on to his word. One of the parts of our stories is that someone had spoken prophetically over us that we would have favor, that we would receive favor. I held on to that. They gave us Ephesians 3:20. Look it up in the Bible. Philippians 1:7, that what God had started, he would be faithful to complete. And we held on to the scripture. Find scriptures that you can hold on to during your darkest hours. And always know that he is fighting for your good. Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to bring you a hope and a future. We have a hope and we have a future in him. Any voice that's telling you you have no hope is not God's voice. So trust in his word, trust in his plan for your life, and hold on to his promises. And that's what I would say, because we had to hold on to faith. We had to say no to fear. Every turn, we had to say no to fear. Every turn. And we had to hold on to love, because love makes no room for fear. So anytime you're fearing, you're afraid that God doesn't love you enough to get you out of this. So hold on to his love and hold on to the faith you have in his word, which is, it does not turn back void in any way. So that's what I would say.
Amen. Very good. Very powerful word. And the truth. And we know that the truth sets us free, right? Missy, thank you so much for sharing your story. If today's conversation encouraged you, I highly recommend that you get her book, Don't Mess with This Mama. You'll find a direct link to grab it in the show notes below. And be sure to join us next time as we talk about what happened after the rescue and how God used one step of obedience to open doors that she never saw coming. And remember, God is always at work in your story.
Thanks for tuning in to Witness the Wonder. If today's story encouraged you, share it with a friend. And stay connected at witnessthewonderpodcast.com. You can also follow us at Witness the Wonder on your favorite social media platform for updates and behind-the-scenes moments. Let's witness the wonder together. Remember, God is always at work in your story.